Welcome to State of Ed, a podcast about education inside the classroom and out. My name is Mark Isix.
And I'm Nick Simone.
How are you today, Nick?
The time has come to finally talk about our favorite technological academic tool.
73% of students say that they struggle to write, not because they can't, but because somewhere along the way, writing stopped feeling like something worth doing. And Daniel Senn and Erlend, Klouman, Høiner built We Will Write to fix just that, turning writing into a fast-paced, anonymous, team-based game that is already being played by more than 1 million students worldwide. We have the great pleasure of having these two brilliant minds behind We Will Write here on the show today. Daniel and Erlend, welcome to State of Ed Podcast.
Thank you.
Cool
to be here.
So I did try to practice Erlend's name prior to the podcast, and I think I didn't do it justice, so I apologize ahead of time or
It's okay.
after the fact, but my intentions were there. Like I explained to them before, I'm from Brooklyn, so there are certain sounds that my mouth is just not comfortable making, but I'm going to do my best.
But
I do apologize.
as we learned at the conference, Norwegians are the nicest people on the planet.
The nicest people on the planet. So, Nick, why don't you do the honors? Can you explain for our audience how we kind of came to know We Will Write? Because I know that we both have a, like, I don't know if it's too strong to call it a love affair with We Will Write, but we really love this tool. And I know that you were actually using it just before we started recording today with a district-wide meeting that you were conducting with teachers in our district. So share the story about how we kind of encountered We Will Write, if you don't mind.
Of course not. So without getting like too lengthy, but I think every teacher in the country knows that when you go to a conference, no matter what the topic is, you want to come away with something that you can use in the classroom tomorrow. That's really the ultimate goal. So Mark and I had the pleasure of attending our first ever VTC in January, and the exhibit hall was unlike anything we've really ever seen. And the setup for We Will Write, first of all, you guys had the best setup there, but more importantly, you had the most engaging people working. They were outgoing, they were intelligent, they were passionate, they were enthusiastic, and they set up this app, which you guys are going to, or program, which you guys are going to explain shortly, to us brilliantly. And our instinct was, I want to get back in the classroom. And just so you guys know, the first day we did go get back to school, I did use We Will Write with my class, just because I had to try it out immediately. So do you guys want to talk a little bit about the founding of this company and how you got to this point?
Yeah, of course. It's, I mean, as you said, our inspiration is that we want students to kind of fall in love with writing. We want writing to not be something they are asked to do, but something they beg to do because it's so interesting an activity. In some way, we had some early discussions that we wanted to kind of change the kind of attitude students have to writing, that we want to make it the most popular activity at school, something they talk about. And it's kind of, especially now with the AI coming in and dominating this space, it's important that students really want to learn this skill. So
and writing is in its core a creative process, regardless of what kind of text you write. So and being, using that creativity is important, I think, for anyone, and that makes it motivating and makes it fun. So yeah.
And making it into a team sport like we have done, like you write for an audience, not just for kind of something on the side with the teacher reading and give you feedback. It's something the whole class is exposed to, and you have to kind of figuring out how do I get their attention. In some way, it's kind of a competition for the teacher and your peers' attention, because the texts that are selected in this team sport will be discussed in the classroom. So kids are really eager to kind of get that attention and be critiqued and be loved and get all the feedback.
Right. I mean, what you've done brilliantly is what I think great teachers were trying to do before we had this type of technology. One of the best ways to become a better writer is to read good writing. And what you've done is so often teachers would read some of the best writing in class, of course, anonymously, but, let's read this section. Or they would have a competition where they would ask kids to write a thesis statement or the opening to an essay. Let's read them both. Which one do you like better? And I've done this over the years. That's what your platform does seamlessly. So for the people that are listening who maybe don't understand, you give students let's see how well I do here with the explanation, but you give students a prompt. You guys create some base level prompts. Teachers have the luxury sometimes of creating it for themselves. And then the students have a set amount of time where they have to answer that prompt. They're doing that in teams. So each team, the number of words that's being typed is being calculated, correct? Then once that is done, each team votes anonymously, and I know, Mark, you said that in the beginning, and that's so important, on which one they thought was the best. So you have this one, A versus B, and then eventually, right, you'll get it down to one winner from each team, and then everybody will collectively vote on that. And the whole process, how'd I do, guys? Pretty well there, or?
Yeah.
And what I just love about it, no, Mark's making fun, but it's just exactly what we need to do to encourage kids to write more. I will just let you guys know the reason why I'm so passionate about it is because teachers now are just kind of like grappling with how can I get kids to not use AI? But they're missing the point. We want kids to write because it helps them to think. The process of writing is critical to developing their thinking skills. And that's why I love what you do. And I have, no problem with a kid using We Will Write. We have a competition. We get to the final one. Now, let's take the winner. I have no problem. Let's put it into a chat. Let's put it into, Claude or any AI platform, and let's see how they can make it even better. But you guys have done this to begin with. So I love the program. Every teacher, I really think, should be using it.
Yeah, I can say something about the kind of design process, because I think what's unique with the platform is the flow for the student. The flow is really, really adapted to their mindset and their speed and their lack of focus and concentration maybe as well. So the flow makes it much easier for them to kind of concentrate, because we also various different activities. As you said, they have to kind of think about the challenge, they have to write, they have to evaluate others, they have to kind of be exposed for the winners, and all these things are timed in slots that's really adapted to their minds. Another thing which is also quite unique with the platform is that we sequence these challenges, as we call them, after each other, and the flow is really quick. So when one challenge is done, we go straight to the next one. And what we see is that there is a ripple effect when you do more of them. The ideas the students share in the first challenge is kind of spreading to the next one. So you see that they in some way they are writing better and better because they share so many ideas and how to approach these challenges. And of course they steal and inspire, and sometimes they kind of continue on others' works from another challenge because that's more inspiring for them.
Great.
But right off the bat, you begin with a visual prompt. So everybody gets to come right into the activity. The barrier to entry that typically exists with the written word is that as soon as students see written words, they immediately start to back away from the activity. By having the visual prompt there, it becomes this welcoming opening or this opportunity to bring the students in. And then what I love about the platform is how quickly you're going. Like, here's the prompt, you're going. The clock has already started. So any questions you have, like, ask them after you start writing. Like, it just pushes everybody right into the flow, right onto the track, and off we go. And then once they're in, but it takes away a lot of that, like, slow working into or up to the task. It's just like, there's your visual, here's your prompt, and the clock is going. Come on. You're already losing time. And that just in and of itself motivates the clock ticking, the competition element. Kids love things like Kahoot and games like that. Those are more assessments. This is on the front side, the front loading of this, whereas Kahoot is on the other side. This engages them quickly to get into the learning and the development of an idea, as opposed to the recap after the fact.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And it's we also reduce the cognitive load. As you
yes.
see, there's not much interface or things interfering with their attention. So and the images are quite clear with kind of a focused attention on each image. So, and I think that helps them to kind of also get started. There is not that much to kind of think about except the image and the challenge, and be curious about what the other kids are writing. I think that kind of the secrecy of the anonymous, who is doing what, is a real trigger for them.
Can I just say something more about the visuals? That, as Daniel said, we try to make it, the visuals, we try to make those as, to make them as idea generating as possible, make them interesting in some way, and make them ideally to make ideas come from the visual. And also the prompt themselves we try to keep them as, simple, and strike that balance between having them open, but also kind of a bit scaffolding. And also what you're talking about, Mark, is that time when the challenge starts, it can be a bit like they're eager to get started, and then it's total silence. And you can just hear it's amazing to see how focused they are, and you can just hear the sound of the keyboards.
That happened today at my department meeting when it's just so funny because teachers are usually not quiet. And like you said, once I hit start, the room is just silent, and you're absolutely right. I'm sorry, Daniel.
No. I'm also one of the things that surprises a lot of teachers is that even with this short burst of writing with just 3 minutes, they are so surprised how much they can write compared to kind of other settings where they get 10 minutes and they write less. So there is something with the kind of the time limit, which makes, I think, from the kind of interviews and studies we've done, it seems like that those students that struggle a bit, they feel this is a fair competition. Because if you deliver an essay next week, they know that maybe there are some students in the class that are much better at them in writing. So that competition, they maybe think I already failed, I'm not among the best. But in this competition for 3 minutes, I am able to win. I can have a good idea, I can communicate, I know the audience, I have other skills that can make my texts go through and get attention. So I think that's quite interesting to see how that's one of the reasons why all of the kids want to compete.
I just want to say that, and we really also have tried to design this and try to even out the differences you can have in a classroom by also the time that it is on a timer that makes everybody has to kind of write quite fast. So if you have trouble spelling correctly, you're not going to stick out as much because everybody will make mistakes in this game. So, and a very important thing about this is that we try to make it as much as we can. We try to make it like everybody competes together, and that's much more valuable when you get your text chosen by your team, that you know that it's your peers who have chosen this.
You know what? Of the many things that are great about it, it's appropriate for K through 12. In my opinion, any grade level can use it, and it's appropriate for basically every discipline. So you've created something that's not just limited to elementary school ELA classes. Anybody can benefit from this.
Yeah.
And like as an example, for AP students, when they have to write any of their responses, we'll talk about social studies, there's like a historical context paragraph that they have to write, contextualization.
Yeah.
So it's brilliant that now we could ask the kids, okay, everybody take 5 minutes, write your contextualization, and now you're going to read everybody else's. So not only is their writing improving, but their knowledge is improving because through repetition, they're reading the same thing about the Gilded Age. They're reading the same thing about the age of imperialism over and over again. And they're reading it from the best students as well. So
yeah, and a little bit different angles. Because when I was in Orlando and visited the school there, they used a science task called Explain Gravity for first graders. And the interesting part of kind of exploring that and watching a classroom exploring that topic was that some students, of course, wrote the perfect scientific definition of what gravity is. but others thought about the target group, so I had to really explain it. So one of the students, they wrote a little story, a little fairy tale, to explain it to this little student, and the combination of all these different stories and the ways to explain it makes it easier to understand what gravity is. It's kind of it is what deep learning is. It's not kind of just memorizing one definition. It's kind of what's the core of it. Why is this text stronger than this? Why is this more precise? What is it we're trying to explain? Those discussions are so valuable. And I think that's a thing that's easily to overlook when you look at our platform the first time, is that it can look like something that's just for fun. The kids write and we vote and we have a winner. But I think the core part of the platform is to have discussions when teachers read the text, present in, initiate discussions, either by the students that they raise their hands and have engaging questions, or the teacher kind of asking really relevant and interesting questions. How can we make this text better? What is it with the text that makes it stand out? Is it a specific word, or is it kind of the rhythm of it? Like, these discussions are really interesting. And when the kids have just delivered those texts, they are so eager to kind of participate in discussions compared to having a role model text written 100 years ago by a famous author. It's kind of, they are so much more into it. So those golden minutes, you maybe have all the class attention for 1 or 2 minutes, but you can teach a lot in those tiny spots of full focus.
Can I just say also about what you're talking about, and Daniel, what you're talking about now, that the value of seeing so many different examples of the same topic, of the same text type, and in the end you will learn from in the end, you will learn what makes this text a good text, and you will see the patterns. And then, so this is inductive learning, which is kind of the deepest learning you can have, learning from all different practical examples. And then you extrapolate the kind of the theory or how it's done from that. And having that from real students' text, that's very motivating, and it creates this deeper learning that inductive learning does.
And over time,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, and over time, student will experience that they grow as a group. Because if you do this on a regular basis, you will notice how they progress and take ideas from each other and learn. And I want to replicate that. And they see some of my peers know how to use a metaphor. I don't know what it is. I want to try to do the same. So they want to they're eager to kind of see what kind of devices other students use and try to replicate it, not by theory and explaining the theory, but by actually using the devices and tools to have an effect on their audience.
Now, one of the things I really enjoyed, because I had used it in the classroom as well, because I didn't, I'm very jealous when I see Nick having a good time and I'm not participating. And one of the things I really loved is at the end, there was a teacher dashboard that allowed the teacher allowed me to see all of the work, not just the winning text, but like all of the students. And it was easy to export that wherever I would need to send it. So can you talk a little bit more for folks who are not familiar with your platform, like what information is available for the teacher on the other side when the teacher wants to be able to assess every single student individually, as opposed to just seeing who the winner of the competition is?
I can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
The teacher insights. It's, a teacher will have all their sessions available after they're done, and then you can go into the single session that you were writing with your class, and you will get like a small summary of how much you wrote and what and also you will get like a summary of how your class did and what standards you kind of touched on, and also kind of what's next, maybe what you can work on as a class. And then you will get all the student texts from that session, and you will get how, because they assess as well themselves, so you will see how happy they were with their own work. And that's very interesting actually, because some students might be extremely happy with everything they're writing, and it's not maybe that good always. But you also have the opposite example, that some students write fantastic texts, but they're never happy with it. And this can provide some very valuable information for the teacher. Maybe you should go and have a talk with this girl who's never happy with her texts. You know, and so that's for per session, or you can go into like a single student, and you can see everything this student has been writing on We Will Write, and have a summary of what this student should maybe be working on, what this student is doing well, that kind of.
Yeah, and I think what it's also important to remember, we also pick out 2 students who are kind of honorable mentions.
Yep.
None of them have had one or got any exposure in the classroom, but the AI picks out very high quality text that don't get exposure. So the teacher can see that and give those students good feedback. And we also point to students that they should look into because they're definitely having some trouble. Their performance is not good enough. So we guide the teacher, maybe you already know, but these students need some feedback.
It's amazing.
And the intention here is very inspired by, I've been teaching design for a lot of years, and one of the kind of core challenging things with that was that we had open critique of student work. We gave them kind of challenges they worked on, and we used their kind of product in process and discussed it openly in classrooms. And that is one of my inspirations for this platform. And the nice thing with kind of having student work in open discussion is that you can guide how they should develop their stories and their ideas further, instead of kind of letting kind of the curriculum set all the rules for what we're expecting. And for some students, this is so much more fruitful process that they can kind of initiate, and then the teacher and the peers guide them on how to continue writing. So that's something we're still continue developing the platform, how we can help the teacher guide students further on. For example, with other platform, other tools, how these students can improve in the direction they're heading.
You take us through, like, from the whiteboard concept to the development of this tool that Nick and I, were so impressed by. I mean, you don't have to go into all the battles that have been won and lost along the way, but how did you form your team? Where did the idea come from? How did your collective backgrounds kind of fuse together to lead to the development of this wonderful application?
I think you should start with the inspiration, or your kind of personal inspiration for this, Daniel.
Yeah, I kind of, for me, it's a bit long journey inspired by my previous company and previous product. My youngest son was born with a severe hearing problem, so I was kind of told he would need a lot of practice to kind of keep up. So that was, and I was told by expert, if you kind of push young kids, like adults push them to kind of learn quicker and more than others, that will usually have the opposite effect. So that was my interest into EdTech. Before that, I worked with technology, design, and education, and I thought I want to explore this space. How can we make any student who who needs a lot of patience and time and repetition and practice, how can we make sure they don't lose faith? Because it's more important for those students who struggle to not lose faith and have confidence and want to practice. So I built a platform for learning to read called Poyo, and that was a long process for many years. But what I learned by kind of building that platform and working with teachers and parents, and I get to know a lot of struggling students and their parents and their teachers, and I kind of understood kind of some of the psychology of what kids need when they struggle learning. So I try to kind of break some of the common truths to kind of see how you can succeed with that. And so that was one experience, one inspiration. And then I worked in Kahoot for some years and got lots of inspiration for how to work more socially in classrooms with learning together as a group. And I think for We Will Write, kind of some of the core inspirational ideas was working with kind of design students with inductive teaching, that we rather would guide students and give them more freedom to write what they want to write about. I also was inspired by kind of professional author courses, which have a lot of these kind of short writing challenges. We are very specific. And I was like amazed that why do we teach professional adults like this and don't do it in school? So there have been a lot of inspirations, but I also have a kind of very strong belief in kind of slow hunch, that it's really hard to understand exactly how to build platforms like this in a glimpse. We Will Write was actually built kind of the team sport, the kind of the rules, the timing, and all those things was built over 18 months in classroom. So we had very primitive prototypes, and we taught in classroom week after week after week with improvements all the time in different grades, and we started actually with the oldest students because we got easier to get feedback from them. And then we scaled it down to younger and younger students as it started to work. But it's because it's really hard to orchestrate this kind of experience with any grade, any topic, any number of students. That was quite challenging because we wanted to make it as easy as possible for a teacher to facilitate this. And that's why we divide the teams randomly, automatically. So it's really streamlined. So it's easy to do this a lot. And I think that came from actually being in classroom for a long time and experiencing how the weaknesses in when things are slow and takes time and it's confusing, it has to be really snappy to keep the attention and the flow. We had lots of problems in the first year. It takes 3 minutes pause and the students are gone. You lost them. Kind of bringing them back in and restart is really, really hard. So we learned a lot. And the timing, I think, was what we learned most in that phase. And kind of a lot also about rules. Like there is a lot of images you shouldn't show students as inspiration in a classroom. It brings really not the kind of ideas you want to expose in a classroom. So we did a lot of errors, which was really, really healthy. So I think we have a rule with 8 rules that every image has to follow. So it doesn't especially in high school, if you give any sexual associations, they will go that direction. So so being kind of inspirational and creative, but still not have your associations anywhere is a challenge.
So how did you then surround yourself with other players to kind of complement your strengths and build the team for We Will Write?
Yeah, so we had I have my previous CTO tech partner. That was the kind of first person in to build the platform. And then Erlend and we were kind of childhood best friends. So we had gone to elementary and middle school together and did a lot of fun things at school together. So I
things
actually
you can't talk about here, I understand. Yeah.
I think I have some. We actually our comic books that we sold in the school year were actually banned. So that's when we were 11. But the reason why I called Erlend was I was very sure that I needed his creative mind to kind of understand how we could create these challenges and develop this platform. And he has been teaching for longer than I had with the target group. Have a long background in advertising. So he was the third person on board. And the 3 of us had enough to kind of build the basic platform and start piloting it and testing it out with letting it kind of loose in the world. And the next on the team was an American living in Oslo.
Yeah, our first American.
Morgan, who kind of run community and support and all the back end of the business. And the 4 of us was actually the only team that got this platform into the US market as a beta version in 24, fall of 24. And I think we had 30 teachers on the list.
Yes.
In the US who wanted to try this, who had found it by magical. And I think it was after 6 or 7 weeks, a lot of other teachers discovered it. And those early teachers started talking about it and sharing how it worked, and it just exploded. And I think it was
we thought that we would only kind of concentrate on middle school. Do you remember? So we didn't really let any elementary.
Yeah, we wanted to be really targeted, but
yeah. That was probably not correct, because now it's a lot of 5th graders, I think, is the grade that really uses us the most. Although we have through all the grades, but
and I think even though we have tested it a lot for high school, and it seems like it looks so playful and fun to work with, that a lot of the higher grades, I think they miss some opportunities. Like, for example, for argumentative writing, there is lots of great challenge to practice on. what we see from those who use it in that regard is that they say when students write essays later on, they have much better arguments because you can practice that on this platform really quickly and do a lot of it in just a couple of hours. So there is you can use this platform in very different ways. In some way, it's just an advanced Blackboard which makes the process just more efficient.
I was working with one of the teachers in Nick's department, and after I had used We Will Write, and I was just trying to think about other uses for other subjects and so on. And when I was working with her, this is a perfect opportunity this is a teacher who loves to use political cartoons and other images like that. So she's going to put the image up on the TV in front of the classroom anyway and ask a question, and that's going to lead to a discussion, which some students will participate in and others will kind of just be on the sidelines. This could be a great 3-minute, 4-minute, 5-minute activity where it's the same cartoon, the same instructional and curricular objectives, but now everybody gets to participate instantaneously. And it's just also breaks the routine. Normally it would be this way. Today we're going to work through our historical documents, primary source documents this way. It just keeps things moving along in a innovative and fun way, and a little bit different with some variety. And it's also effective because it brings everybody into the fold. So, she really loved the idea, and that's just another example of how you've created this program, which I'm sure behind the scenes is very complicated, but to the user, it's very simple, which is a compliment, because the greatest compliment you can give technology is just like user friendliness, and not have to have a PhD in how to use the application before you use the application. So you can gravitate and pick this tool up instantaneously and get it. Of course, the more time you spend, you can learn a lot more in terms of the ins and outs and the intricacies. But that's one of the things that I also love about it, and probably why you went from, in 6 weeks, you went from having only 30 people who were Pied Pipers to however many hundreds or thousands of people who were Pied Pipers, because of how easy it is for someone to grasp. You can bring it to someone, and in a minute, they're going to see it. They'll see the utility of it in a minute, and you don't have to wait for them to have an epiphany. That's a complete compliment and strength of the platform that you've created. So it's wonderful in that regard.
Yeah, thank you. We put a lot of effort into making it transparent. So, and one of the kind of early kind of design challenges is that kids are not really attracted to texts. If you see them kind of play games or anything they do on digital devices, text is not what attracts them. So what we did was, how can we make the text the most attractive part of the platform? So we actually also, in some way, we kind of dulled down things so the texts are more beautiful, like the typography and how we set it up and the size of it and the colors we use. All of these are kind of intentional to make the text look as good as it can based on what we know about what they're going to produce. So that's
the same reason why you're using the We Will Write colors as your backgrounds, which I picked up on also, which is brilliant.
And we have to emphasize probably the most important thing for the people that are going to, pay the bills. No data privacy violations at all. You have the perfect platform. Kids don't enter anything other than 6-digit code that we give them. So that's because that's what a lot of schools are concerned about. Yeah. Early on, I can't begin to think about how many companies just fell flat because they didn't anticipate that. So that's a big one.
Yeah, that's really, and what we are doing here requires a lot of trust from all the players. I mean, we're letting the students write openly in the classroom, so they have to follow school rules and they have to write on track and don't kind of. So I think it's kind of the trust we build with this platform, kind of trusting students, trusting us as a company. Everybody has to trust each other and build a really safe platform. Helps so much. And one of the things that I would say a little bit surprised us is that when students are allowed to kind of share their ideas, their tastes, their arguments, their opinions, their interests, their stories over time in a classroom together, and they kind of do that creates a lot of trust. And there's a kind of relationship between the students and the teacher to kind of use that trust in a constructive way together. And we have reports that a lot of teachers say that this kind of this helps classroom management.
I can see that.
Actually,
Yeah.
that was one thing that surprised me a bit. I remember we went to some school visits outside of Austin, and there was a teacher there who told us that what it have done with their kind of her classroom and the social part of the classroom, because they were kind of struggling a bit with, not the classroom culture was not kind of optimal. And then after using this, she told us that, but because we've always thought about this ultimately as like it's a tool for learning how to write better. So but we use it, we use all this. But what she told us was that it had done so much for the whole classroom culture of her. So that was for her. It seems like that was kind of for me that was a bit surprising that it had that big an effect on that.
Have you seen, I know that the company is still relatively young, but have you seen other long-term or medium-term benefits other than, of course, we know that it gets students interested in writing right away, but have you seen or is there any data to show like longer term impact in terms of how students view writing differently or perhaps, how they are transferring their learning to other demonstrations of understanding. Have you come across anything like that yet? I know it's still relatively early in the process.
We have some teachers who kind of have done they have kind of compared the students' writing kind of early in the semester and late in the semester and done kind of the same challenges to kind of compare it. And then you see the growth, especially on the young students. It's very clear how much they grow in and learn. And sometimes they learn things they usually learn on later grades. And we also see keyboard speed. It's a kind of a byproduct that since there is such a motivation for kind of performing here, they very quickly learn that typing faster is an advantage. So they become better typers. For kind of, and we also have a lot of teachers talking about kind of the motivation for writing outside the platform increases as well. So it's not just inside the platform. And we did a survey, I think a year ago, where we asked about these things. And there was a very large portion of those 4,000 student teachers we interviewed that reported that the writing motivation in other platforms and writing. So it's not just kind of this team sport. They actually become more interested in their own writing. And we have a lot of anecdotes about students that prior to We Will Write said they would never write. And after starting to use We Will Write, they call themselves writers. That they kind of their identity switch, like this is something I'm not doing, choose this is something I am a writer. But we can't document that at scale yet. We haven't had resources or time yet to do scientific studies of this.
It's funny that you said that. When I did use We Will Write, I had the students writing for basically the entire 43-minute period with a series of different prompts off of one initial prompt. It was about Netflix and YouTube. Or no, I'm sorry, it was about TikTok and Instagram. I apologize. And it was just, I kept kind of changing the perspective from which they would attack the debate. And when it was over, I did a quick debrief and asked them if they liked the platform and everything else. And one of the 7th graders is so cute. He says, I really, really liked it, except for the writing part.
Yes,
like, you've been writing for 43 minutes, but that's only a 7th grader can say that.
Yeah. That's so perfect, because this student probably improved his writing or her writing, but that was not. That's fantastic, and I think what's kind of close to my heart is the thing that hasn't really anything to do with writing, but that like the social part, the part about experiencing this together, because some our digital lives and some services and tools and whatever we used, they kind of create this individualized bubble, more and more individualized, which can lead to loneliness, isolation, and feeling that I am different. But what's very close to my heart with this we're trying to do is to have this shared experience. We're doing it together. You get recognition from your peers, and this will and humans are social beings. It's very important for us that we have this interaction all the time. We get this recognition from each other. So I hope we can be like a counter force towards this kind of excessive individualization that the digital lives has given us the opportunity to do, but unfortunately can lead to loneliness and isolation.
Yes, and I'm a huge fan of this pedagogic genius, Lev Vygotsky, who kind of had this theory of the proximal zone, that people are able to do more when they do it together. And I think that's what we see in this platform, that students, when they see and learn from each other so quickly, they can improve much quicker because they're able to kind of lean onto others and do more. And I think that that's strengths that I think people oversee when they just think that AI can support kids with feedback. I think that has potential, of course, but I think humans in groups have a superpower. That's been a very clear inspiration for us with this platform. And there are some tiny details that you might not see. But for example, students can peek on other team members' text, but just the first sentence. And the reason why we let them do that, it's some students find that feature fine, quick, others take some time, and teachers usually don't see it. But the intention is those kids who are struggling or are unsure if they understood the challenge. By doing that, they can confirm that they have understood the challenge, then they can continue on focusing on writing, not being unsure if they understood what they're supposed to do. And they can't copy the whole text, they just get a tiny idea of what others are doing. And that kind of lifts them together with their group.
I used to do that as a student. I used to have to peek over to my friend's paper just to see if I was even anywhere near the right, going in the right direction. It wasn't cheating. It was just guidance.
Verifying.
No, it's so true, though. It's because there's insecurity behind. For so long, many students have not felt that they've been successful at that skill. So now when you're trying to empower them, it can't just happen instantaneously. There has to be a ramp up before they can really get that confidence. And while they're still insecure, they need to be able to have that peak to see if they're even going in the right direction.
Yeah, and I think we really underestimate the need for that. I can share some stories that I have experienced by using this platform in classroom. There was in one session, one of the students in the back of the classroom just raised a hand and just said, "I just want to tell that student who wrote the story about the turtle, can you please finish it? I really want to hear the rest of the story." And kind of another student, and nobody knows who's written this text, but the kind of just listening to that one student beg to hear your story. I mean, what more motivation do you need to write? It's kind of, you have a fan, and the others hear this. And another story I had, that's amazing. And one I remember, I had a student who wrote, it was about a mist, and the idea was so great. So I told the class, this idea is so fantastic. It's good enough to write a novel. It's like this idea, you can just keep it and you can build a whole novel on this single idea. And what I saw was the whole classroom was so proud, because what I was telling them in a way is like, you have an author in the classroom. Did you know? And everybody was so proud. So and the next challenge, everybody wrote so much better, because they I told them, you have a talent. And I was honest about the idea was great, but it was not fantastic. And it was not a complete text. It has lots of potential for growth, but it's like, I was so impressed by the idea. So kind of having that kind of confidence and build that in students, that they can really master things. I think that's so important. And especially if you talk with boys about football, nobody wants to be average in football. So why should we expect anything less in writing? We should expect them to be brilliant writers, because that's motivating for a 10-year-old student. If you just tell them you want them to really excel, we want the best writing. I know you're not there yet, but we're going for perfection. That's really motivational.
I really wish I could offer some advice, but the platform is perfect. I have loved it.
Well, there's a lot of things we need to improve.
I have to say, there is still a lot of details we need feedback on. So, and I know some teachers are waiting for some fixes they have asked us for. We're working still a lot of things we can improve with it, actually.
Well, we're going to continue to do our best to share the word.
Yeah, please do. And please give us feedback. I mean, I think without all the feedback we got from kind of the
Yeah.
first thousands of teachers who were kind of found us, and
Yeah.
that specific feedback they gave us was so valuable.
Mm.
So that's part of why it's so good at this level. We are both perfectionists, but we really need that. The feedback we get from will make it into a perfect platform in time.
So before we close out our conversation, can you just share with our audience where they can find your platform, how they can acquire and use the platform? Is it an individual license? Is it a school license? Can you just walk us through a little bit of the logistics of that so folks have an idea what they're kind of getting themselves into?
Yes, it's very easy. You go to wewillwrite.com and you can sign up there, and then you get access to the platform and you get access to everything for 60 days for free. And after that, you have still access to the core platform for free, but you will have to pay if you want to continue, have to have access to the premium features. And you can either pay as an individual teacher, or you can have your school or district pay. So that's basically the options.
And of course, we want the teachers to get it for free. So the best thing is for schools or districts to buy it for the teachers.
And do you offer, is it a per pupil license or is it a per school building license? How do you structure that for the folks who are like, the decision makers with their fingers on the purse strings? How do you, what do you offer for them in terms of the licensing?
We sell single teacher licenses and we sell bulk licenses for districts. That's basically, and it's per teacher at the moment, and it will probably be per students in a year or two, but currently it's per teacher.
Thank you so much. What a pleasure, and keep up the great work.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Likewise.
And please reach out.
Will do.